Is there any like the stories that you've heard over the years that have really stuck with you, or any that you're favourites about?
One of the really romantic stories that has a significance maybe for 2 counties or 3 counties, if you think about it, is Half-Hanged McNaughton. And you know, it's a tragic, romantic story where this guy was from a well-to-do family. He must have been a bit of a playboy because he gambled and socialised and lost his inheritance. He seen an opportunity to marry the daughter of a wealthy landowner from outside Derry, and at that time he more or less kidnapped the young lady. She was 14 or 15 years of age, and married her, took her away and married her, you know. But the family did not approve of the marriage, and she was taken back to her home again. He ambushed her carriage in which her father and her were travelling between Derry and Strabane, and he used what's known as a blunderbuss. It's a type of gun that I could explain, but it was loaded with a heavy shot for shooting geese, and he shot at the carriage, and he ended up killing the young lady that he had married. So it was a tragedy for him on all accounts, you know. He was tried here and sentenced to death by hanging, and at his hanging, when he went up the ladder, there was a different methods of hanging. Public hangings at that time, the condemned prisoner always wore the rope around them for a number of weeks before they were executed. And then the scaffold would have been across, I think, the Lifford Road, and he had to climb a ladder and then jump with the rope around his neck. The rope broke, and it was commonly seen as a sign of redemption, and he'd have been allowed to get away. But he stayed and waited until there was another rope brought back, because he didn't want to be known as Half-Hanged McNaughton, but he was forever known as Half-Hanged McNaughton. And that's the story. That's, you know, it's a very poignant, tragic, sad story. It would make a lovely film.
My name is Eddie O'Kane, and I was involved with the courthouse in the very early days when the project started, because I was secretary of the development committee at the time, which was called the Clonley Lifford Development Committee. I looked around and I saw that one of the biggest assets we had in Lifford was the history. And I looked at the courthouse here and I thought, well, it's a beautiful building. It's very interesting architecturally, and it has a long history. Something should be done with it. So I made inquiries, and when I talked about it first, I found out that there were plans to demolish it and to have a car park. And as soon as I heard that, I talked to the rest of the people in the committee, our development committee, and I said, I don't think this should happen, because, you know, the last thing we need is to get rid of historical buildings in the town, because all the industry's moving out. At least we should be trying to build things around this important historical heritage that we have.
Can you tell me your name and what you do here at the courthouse?
I'm Gillian Graham, and I'm the manager here at Lifford Old Courthouse.
And how long have you been working here?
I have been working here almost 26 years, so I got a life sentence.
So what does your job position really entail? What do you do on a day-to-day basis?
So the thing about having like a relatively small team is that everyone genuinely does a little bit of everything. So in the morning we could be helping out in the restaurant, in the evening we could be doing guided tours or the escape room, and setting up for different events and functions and things. So really everyone on staff does a little bit of everything throughout the day. So there's no 2 days that are ever the same.
How do you feel that the courthouse gives back to the community?
Yeah, I think in a number of ways. I suppose over the years a lot of it has always been about employment creation, because it has always been an area of high unemployment, but we're hopefully trying to build up again. We have 10 or 11 staff now at the minute. And then in April 2020 because of COVID, we decided to start a Meals on Wheels service. So that was something I had always been interested in. So it was great to be able to do something at that time, and so we've been able to continue that service as well with the help of volunteers to deliver the meals.
So it's 276 years ago, in 2022, since it was built, and there's very few buildings that are still around from that time that are public buildings, and there's even fewer that are actually still in daily use. And that's the kind of amazing thing, that it's still here, it's still being used, and hopefully will still be used in the future as well.
My name's Eugene McCosker. I am chairman of the board of directors of the Lifford Association for Tourism and Commerce and Heritage. That's it, I nearly mixed that up there. I've been involved in the project since it started, directly and indirectly, and I actually worked in this building over 50 years ago when I was an employee of the council. The building itself, it dates back to 1746, and like when you think about it, it predates the foundation of the United States of America. When this building was built, the West hadn't been discovered. It's an amazing legacy of time when you think of it. Now, the building itself would have seen a lot of sad times, tough times. It would have been the courthouse for at least 3 counties. People would have been sentenced to be hanged, sentenced to death, sentenced to harsh punishments, and sentenced to transportation.
If you go down these stairs and come along through the cells, around about just underneath here, where we're sitting, there's a cell over here underneath the floor, and the walls are about 14 foot thick. And they said, this isn't a classical building of 1746. You're actually standing in a building which is medieval. So the wall there is part of a medieval castle. So they thought this was quite interesting, because Michael Priestley was designing a classical building, but it isn't completely symmetrical. There are some ways in which the ground plan is altered, and they said that they reckoned that he was going according to a previous building underneath, and it meant that the likelihood was that when we were standing in this section, that part of the cell, it was part of Manus O'Donnell's castle, which dates back to 1450. And he wrote the life of St. Columcille. He wrote that in that building, that castle, here in Lifford. And that's extremely important for the history of Ireland, because it's one of the main manuscripts of the time, and it's now in the Bodleian Library in Oxford.
This building is a focal point for the community, for events, for entertainment, for dining out, and I think it has a lot more to offer than what we offer at the minute. We have a bunch of hard-working staff under the guidance of a very hard-working manager, and I mean, it's in the interests of everybody to make sure that we see this place into the future.